Today is a special launch of the SABC News' project to commemorate 30 years of South Africa's democracy. The SABC was there to document the unfolding events over the past 3 decades as we laughed, we cried, and sometimes we were even left aghast. Well, SABC being at the center of it all, news covering it, the footage is there. And let's go over back to Constitution Hill. Sakina is standing by with our SABC News Group executive. Sakina, over to you.
Well, thanks, Leanne, and indeed, welcome back here to Constitution Hill. And just listening to those voices, reflecting on 30 years of democracy, and it's such an interesting time to be taking that particular stance because we are, as a country, at a crossroads. Some would say perhaps at the precipice, but of what? And how far have we come? And as you said, I'm joined by the Group Executive for News here at the SABC, Moshoeshoe Monare. Thanks so much for waking up, coming through here to be with us on what is a very auspicious occasion.
Thanks very much. Look, the occasion it's really critical. It's very important, especially given where we're coming from. As a country, celebrate 30 years of democracy. As the SABC, we've been part of that 30 years, especially SABC News, reflecting the emotions, that was going on around 1994 and the people's aspirations, fears. And we decided as SABC News to say it's really important for us to reflect that away from the noise of political campaigning, just to reflect on South Africans, looking back to say what does it mean to them 30 years ago.
And of course, it's so important, as you say, just to look at how far the SABC has carried this democracy, because we were there to document every step of it before and all the way through.
Yeah.
You think of the CODESA years. When you think of those SABC News archives, man, you could get lost in there.
Yeah, no, that's important. But also just to say, after 1994, SABC became a real public broadcaster, especially SABC News, to reflect the plurality of voices, diversity of voices, and not necessarily being a state broadcaster. And from that 30 years, it has told people to reflect the pulse of the nation. And that's what we'll continue doing for the next 30 years. Even if you see our archive, we have documented, we were part of that history. And even as we go into the elections and beyond, we want to be part of that history. To reflect, to give people information, all sides of the stories, all dimensions, do it independently and impartially, to continue to be a trusted news broadcaster in the country and beyond.
And of course, speaking of trust, the SABC is trusted, and very highly so. I mean, in one of the metrics that came out towards the end of last year, SABC actually came up tops of all the entities that deal with government or are in some way government aligned, even ahead of SARS and the IEC
and Parliament as
and
well.
Parliament. So
yeah.
That's no small feat.
Look, that's very much important. That's very important, especially given what democracy and what public broadcasting is all about. If you cannot have a public broadcaster that is trusted by millions, then you're going to have a problem. And we need to remember the reason why we are trusted is because of the credibility of our content, the fact that whatever decisions and that we make as SABC News are based on an independent, impartial point of view. And also to say millions of South Africans depend on SABC as the source of the news, and therefore we cannot fail them. That is why it's important that as SABC News we launch this Democracy at 30 to reflect and also to say to people of South Africa, millions of South Africans, to say we have been with you for the last 30 years and will continue doing so.
And it's such an important project, especially at this moment where it's not just 30 years of democracy that we are celebrating and reflecting on, but it's also a time when many people believe this will be the most pivotal election in our country. But you have that on the one side, and then you've got Democracy 30. And again, looking at Democracy 30, what is that meant to do for South Africa?
Look, it's important to also distinguish that. As you know, that elections, it's about giving voices and platform to political parties campaigning. So away from that noise, away from that where political parties are competing with each other, we want to say as a nation, as South Africa, there is something worth celebrating, and that is the democratic miracle of 1994. And we are saying that outside the political parties, outside the political campaigns, and away from political noises, we want ordinary South Africans to reflect on what does this mean. I mean, 1994, as you may remember, there were long queues. There were people who had millions, and the majority of South Africans who have to vote for the first time. And just to reflect, to say, what does this mean to you? I mean, the majority of South Africans actually did not have any of their fundamental rights being recognized by the Constitution. And they were recognized for the first time when there was a Bill of Rights. And to us, it's just reflection, just to celebrate, to pay tribute to 1994, to pay tribute to what happened in the country in 1994. That is why I'm saying that it has to run parallel, just to run away from the noises of political campaigns.
Well, Moshoeshoe Monare, thanks so much for speaking to us this morning.